All right, we're ready for Chapter 5. Chapter 5 practice test, and this is found at the end of Chapter 5 in your textbook. So let's get started with number 1. Distribute and simplify. What that means is we're going to write this as 9x to the 8th over 3x squared plus 12x to the 6th over 3x squared. We have distributed that denominator to each term in the numerator. And we divide. 9 divided by 3 is 3. X to the 8th over x squared is x to the 6th. Remember, that's the quotient rule. Plus 12 divided by 3 is 4, and x to the 6th. Number 2. We will divide each by negative 8w cubed. This equals 16w to the 6th divided by 8w cubed minus 8w cubed divided by negative 8w cubed. In the first fraction, 16 divided by negative 8 is negative 2, and w to the 6th over w to the 3rd, 6 minus 3 is 3, that's w to the 3rd, w cubed. And here we actually have a double negative. So that's plus, and let's see, plus how much? Is 8w cubed over itself, which is 1. Number 4, we're going to factor out the greatest common factor. I see a common factor between the 18 and the 24, a common factor of 6. And between the x to the 5th and the x cubed, I see a factor of x to the 3rd. And for the y's, I see a common of y squared. That's the most we can take out of each term. And let's see, in doing so, we're left with a 3x squared y plus 8. All right. Number 7. Here the lead term is negative. So we're going to factor out a negative along with the rest, and 14 and 28 have a common factor of 14. We can factor out x squared as well. And in doing so, we're left with 2x and plus 1, actually. Of course, we can always check that this is done correctly by distributing the negative 14x squared back to the binomial. 29a, factor by grouping. We're going to group the first two terms together and then the second two terms together. So we have 4x cubed minus 6x squared as one grouping, plus 10x minus 15 as in a second grouping. And out of the first, we can factor 2 and x squared, and we are left with 2x minus 3 plus, and out of the second grouping we factor 5, and again left with 2x minus 3. And now it's 2x minus 3 that is common, and when we factor it out, on the right side in this case, we get 2x squared plus 5. 29b, same idea. One thing that we're going to need to be careful about is that minus sign, because we need to have a plus sign between the two groups. So when I make my first grouping, 3x cubed minus 6x squared, I want to now say plus negative 4x plus 8. From the first grouping, I'm going to factor out 3x squared. Left with x minus 2 plus, out of the second grouping, I'm going to factor not just 4, but negative 4. And that's because the lead term is negative. And when I factor out negative 4 from that, I get x minus 2. Again, we see the binomials that are the same. So x minus 2 can be factored out we'll put it on the right side. And when we do, we're left with 3x squared minus 4. Again, that plus a negative 4 becomes the minus 4 that's here. All right, number 27. This is a binomial and is the difference of squares, a 2x being squared and a 3. And the difference of squares factors into conjugates. Notice one will be plus and the other will be a minus. So 2x plus 3, 2x minus 3. Done. And number 36, it's a sum. And doesn't matter that the first two are perfect squares or not. It's a sum. This is prime, not factorable. The sum of squares is not factorable. Moving on to number 30a, we have a trinomial here. And because this is simply x squared, if it factors at all, it's going to factor into binomials of starting with x and x. And we must play the factor game to figure out what it is that we have here. In this case, the key number, sometimes called the product number, is 60. That's 1 times 60. And the sum number is negative 16. So looking at factors of 60, you might see the 6 and 10 right away, and they are both negative. So it's negative 6 and negative 10. And because this is a simple type of factoring, the solution we just got in the factor game, minus 6 and minus 10, fit right into those binomials. I want to remind you that you can always check your work here by redistributing, by multiplying that out. All right, number 30b. Again, just x squared. If it factors at all, it will factor into a pair of binomials, each beginning with x. And just as before, this is 1x squared, and the key number is 1 times 9, which is 9. And the sum number is 6. So two factors of 9 that add to 6 are 3 and 3. Those solutions, 3 and 3, the plus 3 and plus 3, can fit right into these binomials. This is a legitimate answer right here. But because the binomials are exactly the same, we could actually write this as x plus 3 squared. That's a second option. For number 30f, the first term is 6x squared. That means that it is not a simple binomial, and we must use the factor game and factor by grouping to actually factor this trinomial. In this case, the key number, product number, is 6 times negative 5, which is negative 30, and the sum number is negative 13. So let's see, the factor game says negative 30, we need two factor pairs. I'm just going to write here 1 times 30, 2 times 15, 3 times 10, 5 times 6. But because that's negative 30, I'm going to have to make one side negative and the other side positive. And then here's the solution to the factor game, positive 2 and negative 15. So we're going to use that positive 2 and negative 15 to split this middle term, and we get 6x squared plus 2x minus 15x minus 5. In grouping, that's 6x squared plus 2x, and remember, plus negative 15x minus 5. Out of the first grouping, we factor 2x, and we're left with 3x plus 1 plus, out of the second grouping, we factor a negative 5, and we're left with 3x plus 1. And now we can factor out the 3x plus 1, and in doing so, we're left with 2x, and plus a negative 5 is minus 5. Same thing. Again, we can double check that by redistributing. Using the FOIL method, we could multiply